Section 2 of Pensees. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Derek McLaughlin, London, Ontario, Canada. Latin language reading by Lenny, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Pensees by Blaise Pascal. Translated by W. F. Trotter. Section 2. The Misery of Man Without God. Part 2. 105. How difficult it is to submit anything to the judgment of another without prejudicing his judgment by the manner in which we submit it. If we say, "I think it beautiful," "I think it obscure," or the like, we either entice the imagination into that view, or irritate it to the contrary. It is better to say nothing, and then the other judges according to what really is, that is to say, according as it then is, and according as the other circumstances, not of our making, have placed it. But we at least shall have added nothing, unless it be that silence also produces an effect, according to the turn and the interpretation which the other will be disposed to give it, or as he will guess it from gestures or countenance, or from the tone of the voice, if he is a physiognomist. So difficult is it not to upset a judgment from its natural place, or rather so rarely is it firm and stable. 106. By knowing each man's ruling passion, we are sure of pleasing him, and yet each has his fancies opposed to his true good, in the very idea which he has of the good. It is a singularly puzzling fact. 107.
Lustrawit lampade terras.
Footnote: He has illumined the earth with a lamp. End of footnote. The weather and my mood have little connection. I have my foggy and my fine days within me. My prosperity or misfortune has little to do with the matter. I sometimes struggle against luck. The glory of mastering it makes me master it gaily, whereas I am sometimes surfeited in the midst of good fortune. 108. Although people may have no interest in what they are saying, we must not absolutely conclude from this that they are not lying, for there are some people who lie for the mere sake of lying. 109. When we are well, we wonder what we would do if we were ill, but when we are ill, we take medicine cheerfully. The illness persuades us to do so. We have no longer the passions and desires for amusements and promenades which health gave to us, but which are incompatible with the necessities of illness. Nature gives us, then, passions and desires suitable to our present state. We are only troubled by the fears which we, and not nature, give ourselves, for they add to the state in which we are the passions of the state in which we are not. As nature makes us always unhappy in every state, our desires picture to us a happy state, because they add to the state in which we are the pleasures of the state in which we are not. And if we attained to these pleasures, we should not be happy after all, because we should have other desires natural to this new state. We must particularize this general proposition. 110. The consciousness of the falsity of present pleasures, and the ignorance of the vanity of absent pleasures, cause inconstancy. 111. Inconstancy. We think we are playing on ordinary organs when playing upon man. Men are organs, it is true, but odd, changeable, variable, with pipes not arranged in proper order. Those who only know how to play on ordinary organs will not produce harmonies on these. We must know where the keys are. 112. Inconstancy. Things have different qualities, and the soul different inclinations, for nothing is simple which is presented to the soul, and the soul never presents itself simply to any object. Hence it comes that we weep and laugh at the same thing. 113. Inconstancy and oddity. To live only by work, and to rule over the most powerful state in the world, are very opposite things. They are united in the person of the great Sultan of the Turks. 114. Variety is as abundant as all tones of the voice, all ways of walking, coughing, blowing the nose, sneezing. We distinguish vines by their fruit, and call them the Condrien, the Desargues, and such a stock. Is this all? Has a vine ever produced two bunches exactly the same, and has a bunch 2 grapes alike, etc. I can never judge of the same thing exactly in the same way. I cannot judge of my work while doing it. I must do as the artists, stand at a distance, but not too far. How far then? Guess. 115. Variety. Theology is a science, but at the same time how many sciences? A man is a whole, but if we dissect him, will he be the head, the heart, the stomach, the veins, each vein, each portion of a vein, the blood, each humour in the blood? A town, a country place, is from afar a town and a country place. But as we draw near, there are houses, trees, tiles, leaves, grass, ants, limbs of ants, in infinity. All this is contained under the name of country place. 116. Thoughts. All is one, all is different. How many natures exist in man? How many vocations? And by what chance does each man ordinarily choose what he has heard praised? A well-turned heel. 117. The heel of a slipper. Ah, how well this is turned! Here's a clever workman. How brave is this soldier! This is the source of our inclinations, and of the choice of conditions. How much this man drinks! How little that one! This makes people sober or drunk, soldiers, cowards, etc. 118. Chief talent, that which rules the rest. 119. Nature imitates herself. A seed sown in good ground brings forth fruit. A principle, instilled into good mind, brings forth fruit. Numbers imitate space, which is of a different nature. All is made and led by the same master, root, branches, and fruits, principles and consequences. 120. Nature diversifies and imitates. Art imitates and diversifies. 121. Nature always begins the same things again, the years, the days, the hours. In like manner spaces and numbers follow each other from beginning to end. Thus is made a kind of infinity and eternity. Not that anything in all this is infinite and eternal, but these finite realities are infinitely multiplied. Thus it seems to me to be only the number which multiplies them that is infinite. 122. Time heals griefs and quarrels, for we change, and are no longer the same persons. Neither the offender nor the offended are any more themselves. It is like a nation which we have provoked, but meet again after 2 generations. They are still Frenchmen, but not the same. 123. He no longer loves the person whom he loved 10 years ago. I quite believe it. She is no longer the same, nor is he. He was young, and she also. She is quite different. He would perhaps love her yet, if she were what she was then. 124. We view things not only from different sides, but with different eyes. We have no wish to find them alike. 125. Contraries. Man is naturally credulous and incredulous, timid and rash. 126. Description of man: dependency, desire of independence, need. 127. Condition of man: inconstancy, weariness, unrest. 128. The weariness which is felt by us in leaving pursuits to which we are attached. A man dwells at home with pleasure, but if he sees a woman who charms him, or if he enjoys himself in play for 5 or 6 days, he is miserable if he return to his former way of living. Nothing is more common than that. 129. Our nature consists in motion. Complete rest is death. 130. Restlessness. If a soldier or laborer complain of the hardship of his lot, set him to do nothing. 131. Weariness. Nothing is so insufferable to man as to be completely at rest, without passions, without business, without diversion, without study. He then feels his nothingness, his forlornness, his insufficiency, his dependence, his weakness, his emptiness. There will immediately arise from the depth of his heart weariness, gloom, sadness, fretfulness, vexation, despair. 132. Methinks Caesar was too old to set about amusing himself with conquering the world. Such sport was good for Augustus or Alexander. They were still young men, and thus difficult to restrain. But Caesar should have been more mature. 133. Two faces which resemble each other make us laugh when together by their resemblance, though neither of them by itself makes us laugh. 134. How useless is painting, which attracts admiration by the resemblance of things, the originals of which we do not admire. 135. The struggle alone pleases us, not the victory. We love to see animals fighting, not the victor infuriated over the vanquished. We would only see the victorious end, and as soon as it comes we are satiated. It is the same in play and the same in the search for truth. In disputes we like to see the clash of opinions, but not at all to contemplate truth when found. To observe it with pleasure we have to see it emerge out of strife. So in the passions there is pleasure in seeing the collision of two contraries, but when one acquires the mastery it becomes only brutality. We never seek things for themselves, but for the search. Likewise, in plays, scenes which do not rouse the emotion of fear are worthless. So are extreme and hopeless misery, brutal lust, and extreme cruelty. 136. A mere trifle consoles us, for a mere trifle distresses us. 137. Without examining every particular pursuit, it is enough to comprehend them under diversion. 138. Men naturally slaters and of all callings, save in their own rooms. 139. Diversion. When I have occasionally set myself to consider the different distractions of men, the pains and perils to which they expose themselves at court or in war, whence arise so many quarrels, passions, bold and often bad ventures, etc., I have discovered that all the unhappiness of men arises from one single fact, that they cannot stay quietly in their own chamber. A man who has enough to live on, if he knew how to stay with pleasure at home, would not leave it to go to sea or to besiege a town. A commission in the army would not be bought so dearly, but that it is found insufferable not to budge from the town. And men only seek conversation and entertaining games because they cannot remain with pleasure at home. But on further consideration, when, after finding the cause of all our ills, I have sought to discover the reason of it, I have found that there is one very real reason, namely, the natural poverty of our feeble and mortal condition, so miserable that nothing can comfort us when we think of it closely. Whatever condition we picture to ourselves, if we muster all the good things which it is possible to possess, royalty is the finest position in the world. Yet, when we imagine a king intended with every pleasure he can feel, if he be without diversion, and be left to consider and reflect on what he is, this feeble happiness will not sustain him. He will necessarily fall into forebodings of dangers, of revolutions which may happen, and finally of death and inevitable disease, so that if he be without what is called diversion, he is unhappy, and more unhappy than the least of his subjects who plays and diverts himself. Hence it comes that play and the society of women, war, and high posts are so sought after, not that there is in fact any happiness in them, or that men imagine true bliss to consist in money won at play, or in the hare which they hunt. We would not take these as a gift. We do not seek that easy and peaceful lot which permits us to think of our unhappy condition, nor the dangers of war, nor the labor of office, but the bustle which averts these thoughts of ours, and amuses us. Reasons why we like the chase better than the quarry. Hence it comes that men so much love noise and stir, hence it comes that the prison is so horrible a punishment, hence it comes that the pleasure of solitude is a thing incomprehensible. And it is in fact the greatest source of happiness in the condition of kings that men try incessantly to divert them, and to procure for them all kinds of pleasures. The king is surrounded by persons whose only thought is to divert the king, and to prevent his thinking of self. For he is unhappy, king though he be, if he think of himself. This is all that men have been able to discover to make themselves happy, and those who philosophize on the matter, and who think men unreasonable for spending a whole day in chasing a hare which they would not have bought, scarce know our nature. The hare in itself would not screen us from the sight of death and calamities, but the chase which turns away our attention from these does screen us. The advice given to Pyrrhus to take the rest which he was about to seek with so much labor was full of difficulties. To bid a man live quietly is to bid him live happily. It is to advise him to be in a state perfectly happy, in which he can think at leisure without finding therein a cause of distress. This is to misunderstand nature. As men who naturally understand their own condition avoid nothing so much as rest, so there is nothing they leave undone in seeking turmoil. Not that they have an instinctive knowledge of true happiness. So we are wrong in blaming them. Their error does not lie in seeking excitement, if they seek it only as a diversion. The evil is that they seek it as if the possession of the objects of their quest would make them really happy. In this respect it is right to call their quest a vain one. Hence in all this both the censurers and the censured do not understand man's true nature. And thus when we take the exception against them, that what they seek with such fervor cannot satisfy them, if they replied, as they should do if they considered the matter thoroughly, that they sought in it only a violent and impetuous occupation which turned their thoughts from self, and that they therefore chose an attractive object to charm and ardently attract them, they would leave their opponents without a reply. But they do not make this reply because they do not know themselves. They do not know that it is the chase, and not the quarry, which they seek. Dancing, we must consider rightly where to place our feet. A gentleman sincerely believes that hunting is great and royal sport, but a beater is not of this opinion. They imagine that if they obtain such a post, they would then rest with pleasure, and are insensible of the insatiable nature of their desire. They think they are truly seeking quiet, and they are only seeking excitement. They have a secret instinct which impels them to seek amusement and occupation abroad, and which arises from the sense of their constant unhappiness. They have another secret instinct, a remnant of the greatness of our original nature, which teaches them that happiness in reality consists only in rest, and not in stir. And of these two contrary instincts they form within themselves a confused idea, which hides itself from their view in the depths of their soul, inciting them to aim at rest through excitement, and always to fancy that the satisfaction which they have not will come to them, if, by surmounting whatever difficulties confront them, they can thereby open the door to rest. Thus passes away all man's life. Men seek rest in a struggle against difficulties, and when they have conquered these, rest becomes insufferable. For we think either of the misfortunes we have, or those which threaten us. And even if we should see ourselves sufficiently sheltered on all sides, weariness of its own accord would not fail to arise from the depths of the heart wherein it has its natural roots, and to fill the mind with its poison. Thus, so wretched is man that he would weary even without any cause for weariness from the peculiar state of his disposition, and so frivolous is he that, though full of 1,000 reasons for weariness, the least thing, such as playing billiards or hitting a ball, is sufficient to amuse him. But will you say what object has he in all this? The pleasure of bragging tomorrow among his friends that he has played better than another. So others sweat in their own rooms to show to the learned that they have solved a problem in algebra which no one had hitherto been able to solve. Many more expose themselves to extreme perils, in my opinion as foolishly, in order to boast afterwards that they have captured a town. Lastly, others wear themselves out in studying all these things, not in order to become wiser, but only in order to prove that they know them, and these are the most senseless of the band, since they are so knowingly, whereas one may suppose of the others that if they knew it, they would no longer be foolish. Thus man spends his life without weariness in playing every day for a small stake. Give him each morning the money he can win each day, on condition he does not play, you make him miserable. It will perhaps be said that he seeks the amusement of play, and not the winnings. Make him then play for nothing. He will not become excited over it, and will feel bored. It is then not the amusement alone that he seeks. A languid and passionless amusement will weary him. He must get excited over it, and deceive himself by the fancy that he will be happy to win what he would not have as a gift, on condition of not playing. And he must make for himself an object of passion, and excite over it his desire, his anger, his fear, to obtain his imagined end, as children are frightened at the face they have blackened. Whence comes it that this man, who lost his only son a few months ago, or who this morning was in such trouble through being distressed by lawsuits and quarrels, now no longer thinks of them? Do not wonder, he is quite taken up in looking out for the boar which his dogs have been hunting so hotly for the last 6 hours. He requires nothing more. However full of sadness a man may be, he is happy for the time, if you can prevail upon him to enter into some amusement. And however happy a man may be, he will soon be discontented and wretched, if he be not diverted and occupied by some passion or pursuit which prevents weariness from overcoming him. Without amusement there is no joy. With amusement there is no sadness. And this also constitutes the happiness of persons in high position, that they have a number of people to amuse them, and have the power to keep themselves in this state. Consider this. What is it to be superintendent, chancellor, first president, but to be in a condition wherein from early morning the large number of people come from all quarters to see them, so as not to leave them an hour in the day in which they can think of themselves? And when they are in disgrace and sent back to their country houses, where they lack neither wealth nor servants to help them on occasion, they do not fail to be wretched and desolate, because no one prevents them from thinking of themselves. 140. How does it happen that this man, so distressed at the death of his wife and his only son, or who has some great lawsuit which annoys him, is not at this moment sad, and that he seems so free from all painful and disquieting thoughts? We need not wonder, for a ball has been served him, and he must return it to his companion. He is occupied in catching it in its fall from the roof, to win a game. How can he think of his own affairs, pray, when he has this other matter in hand? Here is a care worthy of occupying this great soul, and taking away from him every other thought of the mind. This man, born to know the universe, to judge all causes, to govern a whole state, is altogether occupied and taken up with the business of catching a hare. And if he does not lower himself to this, and wants always to be on the strain, he will be more foolish still, because he would raise himself above humanity, and after all he is only a man, that is to say, capable of little and of much, of all and of nothing. He is neither angel nor brute, but man. 141. Men spend their time in following a ball or a hare. It is the pleasure even of kings. 142. Diversion. Is not the royal dignity sufficiently great in itself to make its possessor happy by the mere contemplation of what he is? Must he be diverted from this thought like ordinary folk? I see well that a man is made happy by diverting him from the view of his domestic sorrows, so as to occupy all his thoughts with the care of dancing well. But will it be the same with a king, and will he be happier in the pursuit of these idle amusements than in the contemplation of his greatness? And what more satisfactory object could be presented to his mind? Would it not be a deprivation of his delight for him to occupy his soul with the thought of how to adjust his steps to the cadence of an air, or how to throw a ball skilfully, instead of leaving it to enjoy quietly the contemplation of the majestic glory which encompasses him? Let us make the trial. Let us leave a king all alone to reflect on himself quite at leisure, without any gratification of the senses, without any care in his mind, without society, and we will see that a king without diversion is a man full of wretchedness. So this is carefully avoided, and near the persons of kings there never fail to be a great number of people who see to it that amusement follows business, and who watch all the time of their leisure to supply them with delights and games, so that there is no blank in it. In fact, kings are surrounded with persons who are wonderfully attentive in taking care that the king be not alone and in a state to think of himself, knowing well that he will be miserable, king though he be, if he meditate on self. In all this I am not talking of Christian kings as Christians, but only as kings. 143. Diversion. Men are entrusted from infancy with the care of their honor, their property, their friends, and even with the property and the honor of their friends. They are overwhelmed with business, with the study of languages, and with physical exercise, and they are made to understand that they cannot be happy unless their health, their honor, their fortune, and that of their friends be in good condition, and that a single thing wanting will make them unhappy. Thus they are given cares and business which make them bustle about from break of day. It is, you will exclaim, a strange way to make them happy. What more could be done to make them miserable? Indeed, what could be done? We should only have to relieve them from all these cares, for then they would see themselves. They would reflect on what they are, whence they came, whither they go, and thus we cannot employ and divert them too much. and this is why, after having given them so much business, we advise them, if they have some time for relaxation, to employ it in amusement, in play, and to be always fully occupied. How hollow and full of ribaldry is the heart of man. 144. I spent a long time in the study of the abstract sciences, and was disheartened by the small number of fellow students in them. When I commenced the study of man, I saw that these abstract sciences are not suited to man, and that I was wandering further from my own state in examining them, than others in not knowing them. I pardoned their little knowledge, but I thought at least to find many companions in the study of man, and that it was the true study which is suited to him. I have been deceived. Still fewer study it than geometry. It is only from want of knowing how to study this that we seek the other studies. But is it not that even here is not the knowledge which man should have, and that for the purposes of happiness it is better for him not to know himself? 145. One thought alone occupies us. We cannot think of two things at the same time. This is lucky for us according to the world, not according to God. 146. Man is obviously made to think. It is his whole dignity and his whole merit, and his whole duty is to think as he ought. Now the order of thought is to begin with self, and with its author and its end. Now of what does the world think? Never of this, but of dancing, playing the lute, singing, making verses, running at the ring, etc., fighting, making oneself king, without thinking what it is to be a king, and what to be a man. 147. We do not content ourselves with the life we have in ourselves and in our own being. We desire to live an imaginary life in the mind of others, and for this purpose we endeavor to shine. We labor unceasingly to adorn and preserve this imaginary existence, and neglect the real. And if we possess calmness, or generosity, or truthfulness, we are eager to make it known, so as to attach these virtues to that imaginary existence. We would rather separate them from ourselves to join them to it, and we would willingly be cowards in order to acquire the reputation of being brave. A great proof of the nothingness of our being, not to be satisfied with the one without the other, and to renounce the one for the other. For he would be infamous who would not die to preserve his honor. 148. We are so presumptuous that we would wish to be known by all the world, even by people who shall come after, when we shall be no more. And we are so vain that the esteem of 5 or 6 neighbors delights and contents us. 149. We do not trouble ourselves about being esteemed in the towns through which we pass, but if we are to remain a little while there, we are so concerned. How long is necessary? A time commensurate with our vain and paltry life. 150. Vanity is so anchored in the heart of man that a soldier, a soldier's servant, a cook, a porter brags, and wishes to have his admirers. Even philosophers wish for them. Those who write against it want to have the glory of having written well, and those who read it desire the glory of having read it. I who write this have perhaps this desire, and perhaps those who will read it. 151. Glory. Admiration spoils all from infancy. Ah, how well said! Ah, how well done! How well behaved he is, etc. The children of Port Royal, who do not receive the stimulus of envy and glory, fall into carelessness. 152. Pride. Curiosity is only vanity. Most frequently we wish to know, but to talk. Otherwise we would not take a sea voyage in order never to talk of it, and for the sole pleasure of seeing without hope of ever communicating it. 153. Of the desire of being esteemed by those with whom we are. Pride takes such natural possession of us in the midst of our woes, errors, etc. We even lose our life with joy, provided people talk of it. Vanity, play, hunting, visiting, false shams, a lasting name. 154. I have no friends to your advantage. 155. A true friend is so great an advantage, even for the greatest lords, in order that he may speak well of them, and back them in their absence, that they should do all to have one. But they should choose well, for if they spend all their efforts in the interests of fools, it will be of no use, however well these may speak of them, and these will not even speak well of them if they find themselves on the weakest side, for they have no influence, and thus they will speak ill of them in company. 156.
Ferox gens, nullum esse vitam sine armis rati.
Footnote: a fierce people, who thought life was nothing without arms. Livy. End of footnote. They prefer death to peace, others prefer death to war. Every opinion may be held preferable to life, the love of which is so strong and so natural. 157. Contradiction: contempt for our existence, to die for nothing, hatred of our existence. 158. Pursuits: the charm of fame is so great that we like every object to which it is attached, even death. 159. Noble deeds are most estimable when hidden. When I see some of these in history, they please me greatly. But after all, they have not been quite hidden, since they have been known, and though people have done what they could to hide them, the little publication of them spoils all, for what was best in them was the wish to hide them. 160. Sneezing absorbs all the functions of the soul, as well as work does, but we do not draw therefrom the same conclusions against the greatness of man, because it is against his will, and although we bring it on ourselves, it is nevertheless against our will that we sneeze. It is not in view of the act itself, it is for another end, and thus it is not a proof of the weakness of man, and of his slavery under that action. It is not disgraceful for man to yield to pain, and it is disgraceful to yield to pleasure. This is not because pain comes to us from without, and we ourselves seek pleasure, for it is possible to seek pain, and to yield to it purposely, without this kind of baseness. Whence comes it then that reason thinks it honorable to succumb under stress of pain, and disgraceful to yield to the attack of pleasure? It is because pain does not tempt and attract us. It is we ourselves who choose it voluntarily, and will it to prevail over us, so that we are masters of the situation, and in this man yields to himself. But in pleasure it is man who yields to pleasure. Now only mastery and sovereignty bring glory, and only slavery brings shame. 161. Vanity. How wonderful it is that a thing so evident as the vanity of the world is so little known, that it is a strange and surprising thing to say that it is foolish to seek greatness. 162. He who will know fully the vanity of man has only to consider the causes and effects of love. The cause is I know not what, Corneille, and the effects are dreadful. This I know not what, so small an object that we cannot recognize it, agitates a whole country, princes, armies, the entire world. Cleopatra's nose, had it been shorter, the whole aspect of the world would have been altered. 163. Vanity, the cause and the effects of love. Cleopatra. 164. He who does not see the vanity of the world is himself very vain. Indeed, who does not see it but youths who are absorbed in fame, diversion, and the thought of the future? But take away their diversion, and you will see them dried up with weariness. They feel then their nothingness without knowing it, for it is indeed to be unhappy, to be in insufferable sadness, as soon as we are reduced to thinking of self, and have no diversion. 165. Thoughts.
In omnibus requiem quae sivi.
Footnote: in all things I have sought rest. End of footnote. If our condition were truly happy, we would not need diversion from thinking of it in order to make ourselves happy. 166. Diversion. Death is easier to bear without thinking of it than is the thought of death without peril. 167. The miseries of human life have established all this. As men have seen this, they have taken up diversion. 168. Diversion. As men are not able to fight against death, misery, ignorance, they have taken it into their heads in order to be happy not to think of them at all. 169. Despite these miseries, man wishes to be happy, and only wishes to be happy, and cannot wish not to be so. But how will he set about it? To be happy he would have to make himself immortal, but not being able to do so, it has occurred to him to prevent himself from thinking of death. 170. Diversion. If man were happy, he would be the more so the less he was diverted, like the saints and God. Yes, but is it not to be happy to have a faculty of being amused by diversion? No, for that comes from elsewhere and from without, and thus is dependent, and therefore subject to be disturbed by 1,000 accidents, which bring inevitable griefs. 171. Misery. The only thing which consoles us for our miseries is diversion, and yet this is the greatest of our miseries. For it is this which principally hinders us from reflecting upon ourselves, and which makes us insensibly ruin ourselves. Without this we should be in a state of weariness, and this weariness would spur us to seek a more solid means of escaping from it. But diversion amuses us, and leads us unconsciously to death. 172. We do not rest satisfied with the present. We anticipate the future as too slow in coming, as if in order to hasten its course. Or we recall the past, to stop its too rapid flight. So imprudent are we that we wander in the times which are not ours, and do not think of the only one which belongs to us. And so idle are we that we dream of those times which are no more, and thoughtlessly overlook that which alone exists. For the present is generally painful to us. We conceal it from our sight, because it troubles us, and if it be delightful to us, we regret to see it pass away. We try to sustain it by the future, and think of arranging matters which are not in our power, for a time which we have no certainty of reaching. Let each one examine his thoughts, and he will find them all occupied with the past and the future. We scarcely ever think of the present, and if we think of it, it is only to take light from it to arrange the future. The present is never our end. The past and the present are our means. The future alone is our end. So we never live, but we hope to live, and, as we are always preparing to be happy, it is inevitable we should never be so. 173. They say that eclipses foretoken misfortune, because misfortunes are common, so that, as evil happens so often, they often foretell it. Whereas, if they said that they predict good fortune, they would often be wrong. They attribute good fortune only to rare conjunctions of the heavens, so they seldom fail in prediction. 174. Misery. Solomon and Job have best known and best spoken of the misery of man, the former the most fortunate, and the latter the most unfortunate of men, the former knowing the vanity of pleasures from experience, the latter the reality of evils. 175. We know ourselves so little that many think they are about to die when they are well, and many think they are well when they are near death, unconscious of approaching fever, or of the abscess ready to form itself. 176. Cromwell was about to ravage all Christendom. The royal family was undone, and his own for ever established, save for a little grain of sand which formed in his ureter. Rome herself was trembling under him, but this small piece of gravel having formed there, he is dead, his family cast down, all is peaceful, and the king is restored. 177. Three hosts. Would he who had possessed the friendship of the King of England, the King of Poland, and the Queen of Sweden, have believed he would lack a refuge and shelter in the world? 178. Macrobius, on the innocents slain by Herod. 179. When Augustus learnt that Herod's own son was amongst the infants under 2 years of age, whom he had caused to be slain, he said that it was better to be Herod's pig than his son. Macrobius, Saturnalia, Book 2, Chapter 4. 180. The great and the humble have the same misfortunes, the same griefs, the same passions, but the one is at the top of the wheel, and the other near the center, and so less disturbed by the same revolutions. 181. We are so unfortunate that we can only take pleasure in a thing on condition of being annoyed if it turn out ill, as 1,000 things can do, and do every hour. He who should find the secret of rejoicing in the good, without troubling himself with its contrary evil, would have hit the mark. It is perpetual motion. 182. Those who have always good hope in the midst of misfortunes, and who are delighted with good luck, are suspected of being very pleased with the ill success of the affair, if they are not equally distressed by bad luck, and they are overjoyed to find these pretexts of hope, in order to show that they are concerned, and to conceal by the joy which they feign to feel that which they have at seeing the failure of the matter. 183. We run carelessly to the precipice after we have put something before us to prevent us seeing it. End of section 2, part 2.